The Susan Brender Show is a radio show online broadcasted on YouTube across the United States and globally. The show features guests who speak about health, spirituality, entertainment, and a host of subjects to enlighten people across the nation. Listen to the show that empowers women and men alike and highlights those who have made a difference.
I'm Susan Brender, and my guest host today is Sean Eugene Flynn. And I say that with a lot of passion because Sean and I have had discussions dealing with this very serious topic of PTSD. And for those of you who don't know what that is, Sean is going to explain a little bit. The seriousness of this disease, if you will, is being pushed aside because of the pandemic. And with that in mind, I want to have Sean explain a lot about it and how it's affected him and the thousands of other people as first responders around the world. So Sean, step right up and give our audience an idea of what PTSD is and how you're dealing with it and the people involved in your efforts to get recovery. Tell us about it, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Susie. So thankful the way you introduced everything. So today, again, you and I, we get to go on a service call. We're what we call, as a first responder, we're 10-8. So again, using our imagination. And I'm very, very happy that you introduced this topic the way you did, because the idea today, so we're in the roll call room right now. We're getting ready to go on a very important call, a service call, talking about PTSD, a very complicated subject. And our intention today, Susie, you're my partner. Okay. So let's operate from a couple of different ideas. Let's go ahead and let's try to have compassion before comparisons. And I'll tell you why I say that. We want to have compassion for comparisons because you're exactly right, Susie. This is a complicated subject. It doesn't discriminate. The title of this show is PTSD First Responders, which is very important, but at the same time, as a true first responder and as a individual that has recovered from PTS, still is recovering from PTS, and I want to surrender to the fact that I'm grateful to those that are teaching me and getting me through this very complicated subject, because I've had the honor of being around many, many different individuals that suffer from PTSD, not just first responders. Everyone does. And I want to humble myself, and I want to ask you, Susie, to keep me humble, because it's important that we have compassion. And also, basically what we want to do is we want to make sure that we don't isolate and think that we are terminally unique. And that's one of the key ideas and the key understandings for all of us when it comes to recovering from PTSD.
Let's talk about how it basically affects your physical health as well as your psychological health.
Definitely. Well, I'll talk about some symptoms, some symptoms that come along to be aware of. So some symptoms that are very common with PTS are hypervigilance, constantly being on guard, hyperarousal, trouble sleeping, leads to general irritability. It can lead to angry outbursts. Okay. These are all important things to pay attention to as you go through, the process, because there's different levels. PTS is not uncommon to anyone or unique, but as it grows, as these different symptoms grow, it can grow into where it becomes debilitating and to where the individual can become dysfunctional. So in addition, some other symptoms, re-experiencing the same thoughts from these different traumas over and over again over a long period of time. And that can lead to nightmares and bad memories, okay, what we call flashbacks. And what happens is, over time, as it grows and becomes more significant, some of the behavioral symptoms that are important, I think, and I'm glad you introduced us the way you did, isolating, avoiding certain environments and isolating from others, because one of the keys in recovery is sharing. You're giving me a chance to share today. We can't do it alone. So believe it or not, isolation and contracting and not asking for help and not sharing is something that we don't want to do as we heal. So I hope that gives you kind of a general idea. And now to go into some of the physical symptoms. Well, from not being able to sleep, from being constantly hypervigilant, it can lead to, for instance, like I mentioned before, I ended up having at an early age, I ended up starting to have these heart issues. I had AFib at an early stage in my life, and had to address that. But also, I mean, truthfully, you age very fast. I mean, I started my career in 2000, and by the time 2010 came around, my career ended in 2018, August of 2018. I'm only 45 years old. And if you were to look at me a couple of years ago, I looked like I was probably 55. Thank God, because of recovery, because of being sincere and being willing to ask for help, I've been able to reverse a lot of those physical health problems, get my life back, get back in balance, and be able to get back into the workforce and be able to contribute, to be of service again, to go on this call with you, Susie, and thank you.
What I'd like to know, Sean, is I want our audience to understand everything that's happened to you from the beginning until now. For example, you were a policeman and you worked with kids. You had a lot of different jobs. You were a boxer. You did a lot. And when you suffered from PTSD, how did that change?
Well, gradually my motor, my passion, my spirit began to deteriorate slowly. And I had no idea at the time what was happening. So as a police officer, take for instance, okay, I worked for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. I had a chance to do a lot of different things as a first responder. I worked a lot of different shifts. I worked midnight shift. I worked day shift. I had a chance to do what we call community policing, to where you get out in the community and you get out there and you work with people and you try to solve problems, and you get, eye to eye with members of the community. Not only did I do that to work with juvenile crime prevention and other different community policing services that we did, I also was a road patrol supervisor, responded to 911 calls, one right after the next. And one of the areas of Palm Beach County, which is very dear to me, we could have a night where I was in charge of 16 men, and we would, for instance, we would handle 7 different shootings within an hour and 12 minutes, okay, all within the same 2 communities. Now, what happened to me over time, I started to slowly deteriorate. I couldn't sleep. It was there was some significant traumatic events that happened, but like any true first responder, I would just bury it, stack it, disassociate from it, put it away, and keep moving forward. Yet my energy, my passion, my ability to control my thoughts, and just to stay in what I would call a balanced zone started to really slip away. So finally, I tried a bunch of different things to stay balanced. And finally, in 2017, I went to ask for help when I was working for the Palm Beach County School Police Department, having really no idea of how hard this work was going to be to fully recover. And I started my journey by basically raising my hand. And then thankfully, I'm here today, and there's more to be told. I ended up at a place in San Antonio. It's called Warrior's Heart. It's in a place called Brender, and it's strictly for first responders to come and to share and to heal from conditions such as PTSD, such as the other types of disorders that can come from a career as a first responder. And also, what's also a part of my story is that while I was trying to figure all that stuff out from 2015 primarily up until now, I went to doctors and I was put on medications, and I had a history of drinking alcohol and whatnot. And in conjunction with that history, and it never was let me be sincere about that. It never led to me being completely dysfunctional. It wasn't like it was something that I had to have every day. It was a part of my life. It was a part of my family history. I think biologically, I'll just say honestly, I have this gene in me. You add that now with PTS, and now 2017 comes around, I'm going to different doctors and they're giving me different medications, and I've got a whole, now I guess a dual problem, as we would call now. It's called dual diagnosis, because basically the alcohol and the medications that you take over time become I guess they mask. Some of them can help, some of them can't. You can become addicted to them, but basically they they're not the whole solution. So then all of a sudden now I'm dealing with two problems. I'm dealing with PTSD that has now graduated into chemical dependency. And so now you could, explode both of those times, 10, and I've got a major problem. So I ended up going to a place strictly for first responders. It's called Warriors Heart in Bandera, Texas. And I was able to finally start getting in a situation to where I was comfortable enough to start sharing about what was going on in my life. And they helped me to develop an equation and do the hard work to get where I'm at now. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea.
Yeah, Sean, you and I talked about the similarity of treatment, and I mentioned to you that it sounds a little bit like AA, where people who are addicted to different substances go to get help. And I think that you said that there is a component to the program at Warriors Heart, which involves AA.
Well, I'll just say I'm not a spokesperson for Warriors Heart. I'm not a spokesperson for AA. I'm not a spokesperson for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. I will clarify. But when it comes to dual diagnosis, from where I'm at now and what I've learned, see, what happens is with chemical dependency, okay, reaching for a substance, reaching for something to temporarily kill the pain that you're going through or the struggle that you're going through within your mind with PTS, within whatever it is that your struggle is, whatever that trauma was. Okay, what happens is, and it's very important, we're talking about 12 steps. And yes, I 100% agree. I'm so grateful because before I could start addressing PTS and the trauma and all those other issues, I had to stop drinking. I had to stop using chemicals, whether it was medications or anything else. Number one, I had to learn how to do that through the steps, which is a spiritual path of action, something that's been around for many, many years. And again, I'm not a spokesperson for it, but I'm grateful because before you can actually get to the trauma and get to the real stuff that's got you, your heart broken, and that that you're trying to detach from and you're trying to make sense of, you have to stop using self-medication. And so that's where 12 steps is an important equation. It's a very important equation that if you don't, in my experience, that comes in conjunction with the PTSD therapy. But in my experience, it's necessary first, number one, to stop self-medicating. And the way I learned that is through a 12-step program. And I continue to do that, every day. And again, not a spokesperson for AA, not a spokesperson for Warriors Heart, but the truth is dual diagnosis, learning how to get your medications in balance, learning which medications you're addicted to that you shouldn't be using, getting all that balance with a team so that I can start learning how to heal properly, get back into service of others. That's a key thing. Helping others and this is what you learn in the path of the 12 steps, helping others and giving back to others and helping them recover from the same thing that you're recovering from is key to your victory. So in other words, it's almost the same as what I, signed up to be, which was a first responder, which is basically, go into service and help others. But I didn't figure all that out on my own. I had to get some mentors in my life, get some coaches, and have them show me how to do that so I could get my life back in balance. And guess what? We're doing that right now.
Sean, now everybody is concentrating or focusing on the pandemic. And I guess they don't think about other diseases, albeit whether it's medical or rather psychological or physical. They don't think about that. But how many people, do you have a statistic of how many people are actually committing suicide as a result of PTSD?
Once again, so from what I hear, again, I'm speaking from my experience. So since I started on my path of recovery, I'll just speak from my experience in 2017. And again, when I first raised my hand to go get help, in between 2017 and now, I wanted to live. I wanted to figure this out, but yet I failed several times because this is a very difficult thing to beat up until over a year ago. Okay, so that's how difficult this is. To answer your question, since I started on this path of recovery, I've known 11 different friends who have either died from suicide or have died a slow death, most likely resulting from the disease of addiction coupled with, PTSD. They've lost their lives due to medical complications. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a counselor. I'm going to speak from my experience. So since 2017, I've known 11 people and heard of many more. And now, being that I was in their shoes, being that I understand the dilemma, the pain, the trauma, what PTSD really is, I can relate and I can understand because I can relate because I've gone through it. And thank God I was given a second chance, because I could have ended up like one of them. But to humbly say, this is a very important subject because it is a life and death progressive disease, and it could have been me. And thankfully I got a second chance. And now my primary purpose, my intention is to share from my experience, to talk about what I've been doing, what I continue to do so that I can continue to heal and help others. The other thing is, like I said at the beginning, compassion before comparisons, because truth be told, Susie, this is why this is so important. It's an invisible hemorrhaging, and it's sometimes very hard for those out there listening to really understand what it takes to get through this. And people that can't really relate on that level, sometimes it's like, well, you should just suck it up and get through it. Well, yeah, I get that. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what we do. But it's much more difficult. But once you get it, and once you get going, and once you figure out that equation, let me tell you, you get your life back, and then you get an incredible life times 10 as a result of recovery. So,
Sean, what about the family? Where do they get in? How do they get involved, and what can they do to help whether it's their children, their brothers, their sisters? What is the function of a family when they know that their child or as I said, the brothers or sisters are going through this?
Okay, great question. So what happens with this complicated, confusing, misunderstood disease is a lot of times families want to help. So the best recommendation I could suggest is that there are programs out there, and there's ways to learn on how to help. And the reason why I say how to help is sometimes family members will do things and they will help in ways that they think are helping, but yet they're not helpful. So to learn how to actually help, to learn how to work with someone with PTS, which leads into chemical dependency, or vice versa, chemical dependency and PTS, you name it, doesn't matter. I would suggest that, number one, you start seeking, you become a seeker, because there's programs out there and there's professionals out there that can help you learn about the disease, number one, and what's really going on, so that you can have compassion for your loved one. And you're also going to be told the cold, hard truth of some of the things that you might be doing as a family member or as a parent or as a friend that are actually not helpful, and that can lead to enabling and delays on that person actually getting to the point where they need to be so that they can recover. So I would suggest that you become a seeker. You reach out. There's a lot of help out there for parents and families. And that's what I had to do. I had to basically to do that on both sides for myself. I not only learn how to recover from PTSD and chemical dependency, I also had to learn how to be compassionate to those that suffer from it. So I had to work both sides of the coin, and I still do that so I can be most useful to the friends that I have now that are still in the struggle, and they're still doing the things that they shouldn't be doing. It teaches me how to be compassionate. It teaches me how to work with others properly. And that's a continual education for me. That's a continual process that I go through. I actually do things, on a monthly and a weekly basis to make sure that I stay sharp on how I can be useful.
Sean, where are you now? You talked about all of the aspects of recovery, talked about the way families can handle anybody who is dealing with this problem. But what about you now? Have you come a long way, or do you feel that you have a lot to go? What is the situation with you?
Well, my primary purpose, where am I at now? I'm smiling right now is what I'm doing. I'm smiling. I'm grateful that I got a second chance. Okay. Now, let me humbly say, I can't take credit for this. I got to give credit where credit's due. So I got a second chance and I was willing. I was a seeker and I started listening, and I've got so many people I can give credit to, but let me just start simply with a couple people in mind here. So I ended up in Brender, Texas at a place called Warriors Heart, strictly for first responders, trauma nurses, firemen, military, dual diagnosis, right? And the founder is a guy by the name of Tom Spooner. There's Josh and Lisa Lannon. Lisa was a Las Vegas police officer. Tom is actually from the area that I worked most of my career, which is actually Belgrade, Florida. And he grew up there, graduated high school from Forest Hill High School. He's from Palm Beach County. And I'm glad I get a chance to share on this and give credit where credit's due. So between Tom, Josh, and Lisa Lannon, they started helping people on this path. I know Tom, I think it was at least 27 years ago, and he went to the Army at the age of, I believe, 18 or 19, and he had a very successful Army career. But the truth is, he suffered from the toll of that we're all talking about here, PTSD first responders, and yet Tom is basically an indirect mentor for me. And because of what he has been doing in the path of recovery, I had a chance 3 years ago in 2017 to meet him at a place called Warriors Heart, not knowing that he was from the same county that I did most of my work as a police officer, which is Western Palm Beach County. And while I have a chance, I want to say hello to some of the amazing people that I've had a chance to work with out there, that grew up out there, because you talk about a place that was my favorite place to work in the Western communities, yet it was a very challenging place to work. But what I'm basically saying is that greatness comes from places such as the Western communities, which is Belgrade and Pahokee, and Tom Spooner came from that place. And because of Tom's work and helping other people, I get to live and share today. So, I'm actually holding myself back here. I can't express how much gratitude I have for Tom, for Lisa Lannon, and for Josh Lannon, who started Warriors Heart, all because of what I'm talking about, which is how can we help? How can I be of service? How can I give back freely so much which was given to me? I can't take credit for where my life is. My life is amazing right now. And yet, I'll humbly say I have a lot more to learn. And that's why I want to have compassion before comparison, because I'll tell you this, over the last 3 years, I've had a chance to work with a lot of soldiers, a lot of military veterans, a lot of police and firemen that have gone through what I've gone through. They've been injured. They've saved lives. They've took the oath to put their life on the line. And man, I'll tell you, it's I'm grateful that I've gotten through what I've gotten through. But let me tell you, and why I say comparisons are dangerous, there's some men and women out there that have been through, in my opinion, a heck of a lot more than I've been through. And they are doing exactly what I'm doing right now to say, hey, what can we do more to help PTSD first responders? What can we do more to help the men and women that serve? Now, here's the beautiful thing. I always bring it home with this, because we've got civilians listening. We've got maybe children listening. We've got parents listening. The idea for a true leader in this recovery is to eliminate the idea that we are terminally unique. So now what happens is when a first responder can bounce back like me from PTS and chemical dependency, just imagine how much more better of service I could be in the community, or anyone that's educated on this could be in the community, to have compassion for children that are born in the world with trauma, for civilians. Now we can suit up and show up, just like you and I are right now on this call. We can suit up and show up, and we can be more useful to those out there. So that's why it's important that as we're listening today, that we do keep an emphasis on PTSD first responders and that population. Although we know as true leaders, we are not terminally unique, and PTSD and chemical dependency does not discriminate. But it's very important because it can be overlooked when it comes to first responders. They're the ones we call, and they can easily be forgotten. And agencies, departments, I pray and I hope that they start looking at this in a way to where they want to be more helpful for those that have made the sacrifice, because what can happen is like, if I'm on the road and I'm working right now and I'm employed by an agency and I call for backup because my life is on the line, the agency will send every resource, the SWAT team, every single piece of equipment to come save my life. But yet if I come in and if I say, hey, I'm struggling with this mental situation, I'm having some issues, you get sent home a lot of times, you get left alone, you get abandoned. And now that's the worst thing. Like I was talking about, isolation is the worst thing for recovery in PTS and with chemical dependency. Agencies really haven't, I don't think, evolved to the point where they could be more useful and really take care of those that sacrificed so much and took on the toll. I think there definitely is a subject to be talked about and argued that we need to do more for how we take care of our first responders, because when we go in and ask for help, it's not like when we're on the road to send the whole department. We go in and ask for help. When it comes to this, hey, we go to HR, we get sent home, we get basically, there's these rules in place, and now we're alone. And that's the worst place to be in recovery, is isolated and alone. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for bringing this topic up.
Well, Sean, it's we have to take a wrap right now, but I would like you to tell our audience just in a couple of words what to expect in our next interview, because you have so much information. You have so much to educate people about this horrendous problem called PTSD. And could you give us a little hint of what will come next?
Absolutely, and it'd be my honor to. So thank you for letting me share today, but I look forward to having a couple of guests on, a couple military veterans that I know that are personal friends of mine that have also helped me. They've given back to me and they've shown me the path. So I've got a couple of friends that are career military veterans, and I'm looking forward to having some guests come on so that you don't have to listen to me every day and I could learn more. And in other words, there's others out there that I think need to be heard that understand this topic and have been doing it longer than I have, but also can reiterate and talk about some of the key points that I've made that are important for us to understand. So I look forward to having a couple of guests on. I've got one in mind, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold off and not mention the name yet until you and I, Susie, get together and we figure out who's going to be next.
Well, this is a perfect ending to a very interesting discussion about PTSD with my co-host, Sean Eugene Flynn. And I want to tell everybody, look forward to hearing again about this important disease. I know the pandemic is on everybody's mind, but on the other hand, there are a lot of other things that we need to learn about. So with that in mind, thank you, Sean, for being my co-host, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Susie.